Hello everyone and welcome to a thrilling and a very enjoyable game from round 3 of the FIDE Grand Prix 2022, currently being played in Berlin. It's Levon, Aronian versus Vincent, Keymer, and I attended 2 children birthdays today, so I didn't really follow what was happening in the chess world, and I got home now, and I can see that we're pretty much spoiled for choice regarding the games we can analyze. So this is the one that I'm starting with. It's super enjoyable. You guys will very much like it, but I'm also taking suggestions for the next one I show, as I will show at least one more from round 3. So without further ado, let's check it out. It's a very nice game. So Levon with the white pieces opens with e4. We have c6, Keymer goes for the Caro-Kann defense, we have d4, d5, and Levon goes for the exchange variation. We have e captures, c captures, and bishop to d3. So very solid. Knight to f3, we have h3, now taking away the g4 square from black's pieces, and knight to c6. We have knight to f3, and now knight to b4. So kind of breaking the opening principle, even though it's hard to say if that's even a thing anymore with all of the neural nets and the very strong engines that are suggesting to us what to play. Yeah, all in all, whenever I see such a move, I at least frown upon it. So here, okay, we're threatening to pick up white's light square bishop, and we're gonna win the bishop pair. However, you are neglecting your development. So let's see how Levon deals with this. He just continues developing, knight to c3, and now we have g6. So there are a couple of games where knight captures and d3 was played, but here we have g6, and now it is already as of move 7 that we have a completely new game, as that's an information you guys very much enjoy. So knight to e5. The e5 square has been made available as the knight left the c6 square, so you don't have to worry about losing the d4 pawn or your knight being threatened in any way, and it's an incredible square for the knight. So here a6 by Keymer, we have castles and bishop to g7. Black is now also ready to castle, rook to e1, and Vincent castles, and now bishop to g5, so putting a lot of pressure on that e7 square. And here knight captures on d3. Finally, the knight picks up the bishop. We have c captures. The queen could capture, but then you allow black to develop with tempo, so we're going to capture with the c pawn. And now, yes, we have a double the d pawn, but we are controlling a lot of central squares here. For example, this knight will never be able to go to e4, and that's usually a good square for this knight. So here, queen to b6, attacking the d4 pawn and the b2 pawn, and Levon defends it very elegantly with knight to f3. So the d4 pawn is now defended, and the b2 pawn is a poison pawn. If you capture on b2, we're going to play knight a4, attack your queen, and also your e7 pawn is now hanging. So if queen a3, defending and attacking on a4, we're going to play knight to b6, attack the rook. And now you can't go rook b8 because bishop f4, so you have to play rook a7, and already you can see that black is not really enjoying this position. Rook to b1 can be played, and after something like bishop to f5, if you go after the d3 pawn, we can even play g4, and white is just much better here. Of course, the pawn can never be captured. If you play the bishop captures on d3, rook b3, and the black is lost here. So instead, after this knight to f3 move, we have e6. Vincent continues developing, now strengthens the pawn chain, and knight to a4 now, saying that's a weird square for the queen. I get a nice tempo for bringing my knight to c5. So queen to d6, and now queen to d2. Developing the queen, connecting the rooks. We have a5 now, stopping any rapid development here on the queen side like b4, and rook a to c1. Also, black might have some ideas of maybe queen to b4, trying to trade off queens, but first rook a to c1. And now, if you try something like this, queen to b4, we can even just capture it, just captures, and this is, well, this is lost for black, because after knight to b6, what do you play? The bishop is attacked twice, and also the rook is hanging. If you go rook to b8, for example, rook to b8, we're going to play rook to c7, or even knight to e5, and this is a terrible position. We're going to bring our rook to c1, and there's no way for black to hold this. So instead, we have bishop to d7, putting pressure on the knight here, developing the bishop, connecting rooks, and now knight to c5, so attacking that b7 pawn. And now probably best for black is just bishop to c6, but Vincent plays b6, he wants to chase away the knight, and now comes bishop to f4. Also, an upside of having your queen on d2, you control the the f4 square, so you can play bishop to f4. Queen to e7, and now knight captures on d7. And now you can see that Levon won the c file. He's going to bring the rook to c7, and it's going to be very, very difficult to kick it away from there. So knight captures or queen captures, doesn't really matter. Rook to c7 is what we play. We have rook f to c8, challenging the rook, and now rook e to c1. Now threatening to pick up the rook here. So queen to d8, defending and attacking on c7, but the c7 rook is sufficiently defended. So now we just bring more firepower and play queen to c2. Now we're threatening rook captures on c8 again. So rook captures, queen captures, we have queen captures, and the rook captures. So this is what Levon got out of the position. He won the c file, and having the rook on the 7th is incredibly dangerous. As you know, the rook on the 7th is called a pig because it can just gobble up all of the pawns, and it's very hard to stop it. So rook to d8, we're defending the knight, and now rook to b7, paralyzing the knight. The b6 pawn will fall if the knight moves. So what can you play here? Well, king to f8, we have to start by something, so we're going to activate our king. Bishop to d6 check, we have king to e8, and now knight to e5. And again, Levon has an incredibly firm grip on the position. It's hard to even make a move for black. And imagine if this knight ever comes to c7, that's checkmate. So it's maybe best to just remove the knight from the board. So bishop captures on e5. We have d captures on e5, and now rook to c8. Again, if you're thinking, let's play something like knight to c5, let's activate our pieces, attack the d3 pawn, this is very difficult to play, because first you have to give up the pawn. Rook e7 check, you have to go under the mask of the bishop, we're going to pick up the pawn with check, and now after the king moves, king g8, we're going to bring the rook back. And now we have a very dangerous pawn here, and already, okay, you can capture on d3, but now bishop c7 goes after the b6 pawn, rook to c8, we're going to capture on b6, knight captures on b2, even bishop captures on a5. And now you have this position where Levon would have the outside passed a pawn, and Vincent would have the passed d pawn, but still white is definitely to be preferred here. And even if you try rook to a8, which seems like it picks up the a2 pawn, not really. Bishop c3, and now if you capture the pawn, there's even the deadly rook e8 check, king g7, and e6 check, giving Levon an even greater pass pawn. So f6 blocking check, let's say rook e7 check, king to f8, rook captures on h7, and this is game over for black. So while this is a very good move, it's not easy to find useful moves after that. So rook to c8, sorry, that's not a c8, rook to c8 is what Vincent plays. He wants to at least activate the rook, but it's definitely easier said than done. So here we have d4 by Levon, and now king to d8. We have rook to a7, as the b8 square is not available, the knight defends this, so if the rook ever moves from the back rank, you can play rook to a8 check, and that's pretty much game. So rook to c4, and okay, now you can play rook to a8, but we can bring the rook back with rook to c8. So first, Levon wants to force the rook to move from the c file, so b3. Now, of course, if you capture here and just rook a8 check, we can even show it, and you lose the knight. The king cannot move from the bishop, so knight has to be given away, and that's it, white wins. So instead, after b3, rook to c1 check, we have king to h2, and now h6, making some pawn moves, but fact of the matter is, black is totally out of any useful moves here. So king g3, rook to c3 check, now f3, and now rook to c6. And now Vincent just has to wait and see what Levon will come up with. So h4, we have rook back to c8, now comes h5, and now rook to c6. It doesn't matter if you play g5, we're still gonna break open the position with f4. So king h4, now comes rook back to c8, Vincent has to repeat moves, now comes g4. King to e8, again, if g5, now you can even kick away the king, we're still gonna play f4 and bust open the position, get a passed h pawn, and win the game. So after g4, we have king to e8, again, waiting to see what happens. We have f4, king to d8, and now h captures on g6, f captures on g6, and g5. And now black finally gets a moment to catch his breath. He plays h5, and it seems like all the pushing has stopped, but that could not be further from the truth. So feel free to pause the video here and try to find the quickest way to win this with white while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting any of the winning moves. And yes, b4 is also winning in this position like in many others, but the quickest way to win is what Levon played, that is f5. So congratulations to everyone who found this. And it was in this position on move 42 that Vincent Keymer resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Problem is, even though the f5 square is defended twice by black pawns, well, let's try capturing with the e pawn. We're just going to play e6, chase away the knight, and once the knight moves wherever, doesn't really matter, just e7 check. The pawn is defended, and after king moves, e captures an f8 with bringing a queen into the game, or even the rook. This is all checkmate. And another thing, after f5, even if g captures, we just push the g pawn. And now after king e8, we can try and stop the pawn, even g7 right away, because there's no way to stop the pawn. You can play king f7, but then you give up the knight with check, the pawn is defended, and again, black is completely lost. So really an impressive game. Levon took an opening that's considered not all that much for white. It's basically a quick exchange, right out of the opening on move 3, playing bishop to d3, so this is all very standard. This is something Tal would say that it would be a crime against chess to play chess like this. But you can see that with the brilliant positional play, you can still get a lot of ideas. And Levon is a brilliant positional player. When he has a good day, he just obliterates everyone. So yeah, after this f5 move, Vincent resigned, and another brilliant victory for Levon, who is now leading his group. He's up a full point, but we're going to check out a few more games, and then we're going to discuss the standings of all the groups and what's been happening. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Another brilliancy by Levon. I would like to wish a very happy birthday to Theo, and I would like to thank Triple Triangle, Daniel Silverberg, John Black, and Patrick Mulcair for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this spectacular event while, until it ends. Yeah. So yeah, thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.